Hi everyone, welcome back. We're looking at another scenario, but this time it's about the processes of project management that we will go through. Remember, these processes will remain largely the same with no matter what change you are making. The environment will change, but the processes that you go through will pretty much be the same. And that is what makes them so absolutely wonderful and a great thing to learn for your career. Now, in these first lot of processes, as you know, and as we've been through, we're going through the first lot here, so up to quality. And we've got our integration at first, scope, schedule, cost, and quality. And all these things we'll need to figure out and work with in the initial stages of our project. And these happen to be also, which is a wonderful thing, these are the key constraints that you'll see as part of running any project. The scope might need to change. The quality might be different or, to what the customer wanted. And that's so powerful. We need to understand that and work with that. Cost, of course, might be flexible or it might be set in stone. And our schedule might change depending on, if anyone adds scope, then that's, might change the schedule, might change the quality, might impact the cost as well. So this is what makes it a bit of a challenge as well, and also why it's important to have a process for dealing with all of these things. So let's look at our real life scenario. Remember, we're working as a project manager for our BPR company, and they want to move 200 people within the function to a new building with new computers, telephony systems, and meeting rooms. And remembering, of course, that this could be any change because a project is how we bring about change to an organization. And so it could be a shed design, it could be a car design, it could be any other product, a website, anything you like. And here's a nice picture of the office that we might be moving to. Now the very first thing we need to do is help the project sponsor develop the project charter. So remember, we're working with the functional manager who is funding the change and is basically our project sponsor. They're sponsoring this change. We're going to need to keep them on side during this entire and really engaged throughout this entire process. The project charter is the initial document and it has our high-level things, high-level scope. So moving to the building, the computer systems, the systems themselves, telephony, all of those things, high level. The schedule, so how long do we think it's going to take roughly? How long do we think it's going to cost roughly? Any initial risks and an initial stakeholders list of people as well that we can start working with to flesh out the proper project management plan as we're going along. Now, the functional manager gives us some people to start working with in their function. That's why we need to keep them on board, because we're going into their function. We need to know the people who are going to be impacted. So they're leaders within her function. And we ask them for anyone else who might be impacted or who can help create a stakeholder list, which we start putting down all of the stakeholders who might be impacted or have an interest in this project. And later on, you'll look at stakeholders and how to engage them. And that's an extremely powerful part of project management as well. Who do we need to keep on side? Who do we need to communicate with more often or less often? Now, the project charter. Once we've finished that, we get the project sponsors sign off. So that's our functional manager who's in charge of that function of 200 people. We get their sign off, we get their okay. Do they approve of it? Is it what they wanted? High level? Yes, that's wonderful. And then a few of the other key leaders in their organization whose help we will need. Who's in charge of their telephony? Who's in charge of their physical real estate, desks, computers? Who's in charge of the systems themselves? So all of those people, maybe 3 extra leaders underneath our functional manager, we are going to need their input into all of this as well. Now, once we've got their sign off on the high level detail, we can begin our project. And now that we're beginning, we can start putting together our project management plan. Now remember, the project management plan is an iterative document. So that document will evolve over time. We'll put that feedback in as the project changes and evolves, and we'll keep adding to and changing that project management plan. It's a live document. And it can also be as small or as large as you need it. It could be based on an existing template, or it could be newly created. So it could be a couple of lines in an existing document, or it could be a huge document all to itself where we put all of our sections in. It could be, even depending on the organization, it might just be a verbal contract or a verbal document if it's a really small change. So this is how we need to know the environment that we're working in so that we can make those changes and act in an appropriate manner Do we need a proper document? In this case, I think yes. So we outline the initial sections that we're going to need here, which is our scope, schedule, cost, and quality. All those initial constraints that are so important to projects. So next we can start to move into our scope section, and we create our overall scope management plan. How are we going to actually gather that scope and make sure that it meets the customer's requirements? So we work with a business analyst. Remember, the business analyst role is very prominent. You'll probably come across this many times in your career, and their main role is to help gather those requirements and also to turn that into the project scope. So we work with them to do that. And we'll use things like Confluence, the tools. Maybe we'll use a requirements traceability matrix, which we'll see in a second. And to communicate with the people involved in our project, we hold weekly working group meetings with all of those leaders and our project sponsor. And that just is a check-in point, making sure that they're tracking okay, and also making sure that the scope is still valid as we're going along on our project. So now that we've got our high-level approach to gathering the scope, we can start gathering the actual requirements themselves. We meet with those leaders and teams, remember, from those different areas, telephony, real estate, the computer systems, and we ask for their current situation. What is it that they actually are going to need when we move buildings? From those requirements, we can work with our BA to create the high-level project deliverables. So those requirements, we turn those into the actual scope of the project. So what are the smaller things that we can assign to teams that's going to help make our project happen? And we also create a requirements traceability matrix, which we'll see in a second, to match those requirements to the project scope. So we've got our requirements on the left, and we need to match that up to the scope that we're delivering so that everyone understands how it matches up and how we're delivering that business value that they wanted in the first place. Here's an example of that. You've got your requirement over here, and then of course, the business needs, the opportunities, and all of that is matched to the project or the work breakdown structure deliverables. So when we're breaking down those different work packages from the high-level requirements, that turns into our project scope. How are those project deliverables matching the requirements that the customer wants? Now we can break that scope down into smaller pieces. This is our work breakdown structure. So, and those smaller pieces will be assigned to the teams doing the work, pretty much in that functional organization, because we're working for the functional manager, if you remember. Now, this could be different situations, but in all of your projects, you'll find that there'll be areas of expertise, and you will need to assign those areas of expertise the work that they'll do to make this project happen. So that's what we're doing here. Those smaller pieces that we've broken down, remember the high-level pieces, we've got moving buildings, computer systems, telephony systems, for example. But now we need, what's the computer type? What are the programs that need to be installed? Maybe the telephone types and the various desk and chair setups that we need as part of the real estate or the physical resources. So we meet with each of those leaders, with each of those areas leaders, and we assign this work to them because they are the experts of those items and of those areas. So just a quick check-in. So far we've got that scope, we're up to scope. And remember the requirements traceability matrix, we're validating that the scope is correct once we've delivered it because we can trace it back to the requirements. That's why that's so powerful. And so now that we've done that, we can start moving into the schedule and the cost and the quality, which are the last three things that we're going to look at here. So project schedule. Now we can take those work packages. So we've got our high-level scope turned into work packages. And we can work with those teams to write down the activities that need to be done to make those work packages happen. So we're breaking it down, and breaking it down a little bit more. We're decomposing those high-level features into workable items and actual activities that need to be done. So we work with the teams to assign durations to those activities. How long is it going to take? How long is this one going to take? 3 weeks here, maybe 1 week there, maybe 5 weeks here. And so that's important to know for our project schedule. Then we work with the teams to determine when they can be delivered. Are they dependent on something else? How do we need to sequence them? So now we're starting to sequence those into an actual project schedule itself. And it could look like a few different things. There are a few different ways to do this, which you'll see in the more advanced version of the project management course. But this is a Gantt chart where you'll have your activities down the side, delivering this particular item, and this is where it can fit, and it's not dependent on anything else. But these ones can't start until this one's finished, for example. So that's how we lay it out, and we turn that into our project schedule, into a nice visual model of what we're going to be doing. Now we can start looking at the cost. So we're working with the teams again, because they have the expertise of what they're doing. They understand computers, they understand the real estate, they understand the telephony systems. We need to work with them. Remember, we need some technical knowledge as a project manager, but not all of it. We can rely on the expertise of our teams. So we do it piece by piece. We say, okay, how much is this desk going to cost? And we're going to need 200 desks. And then how much is this telephone going to cost? And we need 200 telephones. And we do it piece by piece, and then we add it all up, all of those different pieces up into the overall project budget. This is called bottom-up estimating, because we're starting from the bottom in the nitty-gritty detail, and we're working our way up to add it to an overall project budget. Now lastly, we can look at the quality. So we assign a quality lead, because we want someone to really be a part of this and make sure that the customer is getting what they want. So they assign someone from each team to help create tests and checks that they'll perform on the new area, the new building, and their computer systems. So for example, computer system and software checks, telephony checks, is it going to the right area? Is it working as expected when they get to that new area? And that brings us to the end of the first lot of processes. So we'll use each of these plans, the scope management plan, quality management plan, cost management plan, schedule management plan, to monitor these things as the project progresses and keep it on track. Is the cost going off track? We need to know that. We need to bring it back on track, for example. So if we need to make a big change, for example, if scope changes significantly, then we may need to raise a change request, and that will be approved by our project sponsor, and then that will feed back into our scope management plan, or cost or schedule, or whatever it is that we are changing. So that's the first lot of processes, and a wonderful way to go through it. Remember, that process will be largely the same regardless of the change that you're making, and that's what makes it so powerful. I can't wait to bring you the next lot of processes, and I'll see you then.